So first things first, for those that don't know, and actually let me, perfect. If for some reason you don't see my screen or anything doesn't make sense, just jump in, turn your mic off, Rachel, or mute off and tell me because I can't see you anymore. But first things first, if you want to know how to access the free version of Twinmotion, which I know that's actually probably one of the hardest steps in the beginning because Autodesk doesn't have very good documentation about it. What you do is you log into your Autodesk management platform. So this is just manage.autodesk.com. If you're not the person with access to this, then you need to talk to whoever it is at your firm that has access to it. Usually it's IS, but a lot of things are user-based now, so you should be able to get to it. And then you go to all products and services. And then I'm not going to scroll through this list because it's an endless list based on my license package here. But if I search for Twinmotion, you'll see it actually comes up. It's Twinmotion for Revit. Okay, so if I click that, this is why it's goofy. Technically, I can give you guys just this link up here, but all it's doing is bringing you to a link that gives you the direct downloads for Twinmotion for Revit. It's a little unique in the sense of if you use the commercial version, the Twinmotion stuff goes through a separate installer called the Epic installer. Because it's the Revit version, you kind of have to do a manual download. And unfortunately, that also means that when there is an update published, you actually have to go down here and download the latest version. It's not auto updating. So I guess one of the benefits of, or the cons of being free, but I guess I'll take a free software over auto updating all day long. Okay, so let's jump into Revit and I'll just give you some tips and tricks on how I go from Revit to Twinmotion. So again, let me know if you can't see or hear me. I know the fan is screaming right now on my laptop, but so this is the project that we're gonna jump into Twinmotion today. This is actually it's actually an artist studio and yoga retreat that almost got built. we went pretty far along, and then the client decided that they were going to move anyways. But this is up in the hills of Connecticut, and they have this beautiful, huge acreage lot, and they wanted to build one with a yoga studio, one with an art studio, and so this is kind of the design I came up with. So you can see it's very basic, it's very simple in Revit. It's just there's a schematic design, so it doesn't even have a ton of stuff in here, but basically got some curtain walls, some walls, and then all the detail you need. And then of course there's also topography. So this is a big hilly site, so that's an important piece of it. So the first tip I'm going to give you is don't use the process that the Autodesk marketing content will tell you, which is going to view, going to Twinmotion, and saying open in Twinmotion. As much as tempting as it is to do this, this functionality is just not there yet. It works, but the sync. It's basically called syncing or auto synchronization. I'm not really sure what the term that they use, but basically it's not fully there yet in the sense of it's very easy to break the connection, and then you end up manually re-exporting and refreshing anyways. So you're more than welcome to try it out, but I actually do an export to Datasmith. So I'm basically generating an export, importing that into Twinmotion, and then if I have a change, it's as simple as exporting, overriding the file, and then refreshing in Twinmotion. And the reason why I say that is first, the data link breaks a lot, which is a pain in the butt, right? The other piece is that when you are using this on a scene that's going to change a lot, you have the ability to, or you can create problems in Twinmotion for objects that are hosted to your Revit surfaces. So if I'm designing the house and I'm making lots of changes to this building, but the topography is staying the same the whole time, I want to bring out the topography as its own export and bring out the building as another export. The other benefit to doing the export and refresh is that if you want design options, you can export just the facade as 3 different options and bring it in and turn it on and off in Twinmotion, which I'll show you in a second. So my suggestion would be do a manual export from Revit of the views you want, and then do a manual import to Twinmotion. And then I will show you what happens when you modify. It's actually very easy to modify, and it doesn't change the process that the linking, which is the marketing material, will tell you anyways. And so if you look over here, I actually have 2 3D views. I have a 3D building and a 3D site. Okay, and that's because I'm going to export this and I'm going to export this as 2 separate exports from Revit. The other thing you'll notice is that I do have a couple of different subregions, which are actually now called subdivisions. But in this topography, I have my asphalt, which makes sense. That's the driveway. But then I have this thing around here, which is kind of arbitrary. What this is a material. It's a subdivision, but it's using a material called forest. I called it. This is called grass. This is called forest. And so the reason for that is there's some really cool tools in Twinmotion called scatter placement, which lets you place objects and scatter them along a surface. And by doing this, even though there's other ways to place objects, this makes it really easy to fill in some context. And so we'll see what that looks like when I jump into Twinmotion. So how do you get into Twinmotion? It's very simple. Just go over View, go to Twinmotion, say Export to Datasmith file. And so I'm going to put these on my desktop in a folder I just made. Okay, so we're going to call this Stilt Site. Okay, press OK, done. That already exported. And then Twinmotion. So again, I have to go in the view, go to Twinmotion, export to Datasmith. It's going to export whatever view I have, and we're going to say Stilts. And we'll call this one Building, BLBG. Okay, so now if I go to that folder, you can see what's there. Oh, desktop, try that again. So you can see now I have two Datasmith exports, and then these are asset files which go with them. So I'm going to import these into Twinmotion. But it's as simple. If I wanted to change this file, so let's say modify the building, I would simply just file export, overwrite this file, and then in Twinmotion refresh it. Super easy. Doesn't really change the process. I got to be honest. It's very similar to the process even when you direct link. The difference is you're not going to break it easily, which is great. Okay. Now we've exported our building. So let's create a brand new scene in Twinmotion. We're going to cross our fingers that Zoom and Twinmotion don't freak out. I'm also not going to spend the time going through all of the UI of Twinmotion. I will talk about where I'm going as I develop the scene. But again, I want to just show you how easy it is to get from that Revit model you just saw there to a photorealistic real-time scene here in Twinmotion. So all the Twinmotion default scenes have this, all this stuff you see here, which is the starting ground, the starting base. You can delete those. It's no big deal. You don't really need them. I'm going to go down to Import, which is down the bottom here. I'm going to click the plus. Click open, and then just go find those files. We'll do one at a time. So we'll start with the site. And now in here, there's a couple different selections you have. What I would suggest with Revit files is you keep the hierarchy. This gives you the absolute most amount of flexibility, but it will make your scene graph pretty big when you expand it. I don't think that's a big deal. You also have the ability to bring in meshes and lights. And so for the sake of the site, I'm just going to bring in the meshes. But for the sake of the building, you could bring in the lights too, which is kind of nice. It actually converts Revit lights into light files in Twinmotion. So I'm going to click import. And this is probably somewhere out in the world. So I'm just going to select this, press F on my keyboard, which zooms into it, because I don't know where it was in the world. Okay, so there's my site, right? You'll notice you don't see the colors yet because I didn't have textures applied, but we'll get to that in a second. Now we bring in the building, same thing, import, building. So this one I'll do meshes too, because I don't think there are any lights in there, but actually let's do all. I don't remember if there's lights or not. And then for light settings, I'm going to use original, it's fine. We could change them afterwards. Keep hierarchy, click import. Okay, so there's our building there, as you can see, right? And then you can see on the top up here, this is the container. This is where our whole scene is. So you have the ability to turn these things on and off, okay? But because we did keep hierarchy, I can actually expand this, and all the individual families and components from Revit are actually right here. And you can literally scale them, move them. You can do whatever you want with them. But that just gives you a little extra flexibility in what you're doing. Same here. You can see walls, roof, right? So I can literally turn off just that roof there if I want to. So it's giving you the ability to modify the scene as needed. The other thing I didn't mention in Revit, so I don't know how many people on this call are Revit users or maybe in the process of learning Revit, but Revit's custom textures. So creating materials in Revit. So if you notice as I jump back over here, I do have the shaded view looks very good in Revit, right? But if I go to realistic, which is textures, hope it doesn't blow up. Cross our fingers. Okay, you'll notice I didn't really apply too many textures because I knew I was using Twinmotion. So I made sure that my graphics in Revit, which means like my floor plans, my elevations, my sections, my details, all of that stuff is going to be graphically okay. But I didn't need to go through the process of applying material texture or textures to it, which are images, in Revit. And anyone who's used to that process, you know that applying custom materials in Revit absolutely sucks. It's not a fun process. So yeah, I could have probably made them at least colored, but that's okay. I'll show you exactly how to do it. So now we have our scene in here. Let me save it in case we have a meltdown or a crash here. Studio, loud. I know you guys are probably thinking, how on earth are we going to do this in less than 30 minutes? You're gonna be surprised. So one of the great things about, once we have it in here, one of the great things about Twinmotion over, let's say, an Enscape, and even in Lumen these days, is the crazy amount of a library that you have to choose from. And I'm not talking about just remove import here. I'm not talking about just objects. Like they have a lot of objects here, but materials too. So if I go under materials, these are all the built-in. Remember, this comes free with Revit. This is free for Revit users, and all the content you're seeing here comes with Twinmotion, even the free version. Find them. Okay, so if I go in here, you can see these are all sort of the out of the box. Let's say we're going to call them the out of the box materials, right? So if I go into materials, I got roof coverings. I got, these are actually really nice materials too. But we also have under mega scans here, we have surfaces. We have an entire library of 3D scan surfaces. And what that means is that this entire library was created from scanning actual elements in the real world. So you can see if I go in here, I've got, and I could just scroll forever. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of different materials that that we can use from this library. So not only do you have the default, but you have all this. Then we go beyond to objects, and for objects we have all the default, which I go through this. There's hundreds of here's benches. Here's if I go under houses, there's hundreds of things in there. But then we have a whole nother set of libraries from Megascans. We have a whole other set of libraries from Sketchfab. So it is like honestly endless supply of content to fill your scene. And anybody who's ever made real-time rendering scenes or even rendering in general, the context and the entourage you put in the scene is almost as important as the building itself because of how it makes it feel realistic. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add reflective glass to my glass here. And you can see all I'm doing is dragging and dropping. Okay. One of the, let's do this one here so I can show you. One of the tips I can give you as Revit users is if I'm placing this material, so this even though it looks silly, I know this is supposed to be a horizontal metal panel, even though I use sliding clapboard. I think I went with metal panel there. Maybe we could do wood, doesn't matter. But one of the things what you'll notice, if I go to wood and let's do wood siding, is if I drop this onto Revit or onto the scene from Revit, you can see the scale of this is way, way off, right? So for the longest time, I thought, oh crap, I have to scale this up. And I would go over here and I'd scale it all the way up every single time I placed it. But that's only because of the way Revit's UV mapping works. So I discovered that up here on the top of Twinmotion, there's a little button for a surface material or UV, what type of UVs you're using. And so if I take it, instead of from object, I change it to cubic UVs, and then I place my siding, you can see it's actually to scale. So when you're applying to Revit, or when you're applying objects from Revit, what you want to do is you want to do object, or what is it called again? Cubic UVs, okay? So you can see, and notice how I was able to put that on there and just darken it real quick because you have all these settings here. And then I'm going to go back, go to materials, and I'll go to metal. Let's do like a nice black metal panel or something like that here. Let's see. Let's do light metal. Okay. And then you can see I can just modify these materials as they go along. Maybe we do something like this, and we can apply it to separate pieces there. And you can see how I can just quickly drag and drop and sort of apply this stuff to my object from here. And I think in this area, and sorry for moving a little fast, but okay, wood interior. So this one I think was supposed to be like a wood. I don't remember what I originally was thinking for this, but we'll just go with this now. Perfect. Okay, so the other thing too is you'll notice the UVs They do change based on the direction. One of the most recent updates with Twinmotion, which this is not installed yet, is the ability to modify how that comes in from Revit, which is super valuable. Right now, you're kind of at the mercy of what it is. Here, I'll just throw an oak down here. Maybe we'll toss, by the way, T is how I'm pulling up, the T on my keyboard is how I'm pulling up this eyedropper. And this part where I'm going to go a little fast because I want to make sure that we get through to other tips and tricks, not just applying materials the whole time. So I'm just going to go with black. Everything's going to be black right there, whatever. Let's go with a metal. And I'll do like a nice galvanized steel here. That's not a nice one. How about bigger breath? Sure. And so you can see I'm actually downloading this material. Remember, there's endless materials. You could literally sit here all day long applying materials to these objects. So that's pretty good. What was this supposed to be under here? Let's see. This is underside of mat. All right. We'll give that, maybe we'll do like a plywood just for fun. So we'll go under, actually I could just search plywood. Right, you can see I have a plywood here or a plywood here. You can see it's a pretty nice texture. And remember, these are out of the box. These aren't even me going into the Quick Mega Scans, and you can see I'm just kind of modifying them. So anyone who's ever done materials in Revit can probably see how nice and easy that was. Okay, and then I think I actually had this in my original rendering as like a yellow door. So we had let's do a pop of color on the door just for fun. So we'll do plastic fabric. Plastic. Plastic. Yeah, nice bright door. Okay. Now let's quickly do the topography. So that's our building is essentially materialized. I might have missed some, but that's okay for the sake of today. So I'm just going to go back. I'm going to go to ground. I'm going to go to natural. And for now, we'll do a forest ground here. That's an ugly one. Try this one. This one. Sure. And I know this texture looks a little crazy right now, but I'll show you how we're going to make this much, much better. And then we'll do out here, if you remember correct, this was the other forest ground or the forest area that we're going to put trees on. Let's scale that up a little big. And then we'll do asphalt right here, or maybe we'll do gravel for the sake of it. Doesn't matter. I can see it. Okay. So as you can see, right, we've already got ourselves a scene that's coming together a little bit. Okay, so let me save that. Now, one of the things with Twinmotion that came out about a year ago is the real time. As you can see, I mean, if you get the light settings tweaked a little bit in here, you'll actually start to see a pretty good photorealistic image, so to speak. But we are given the ability to do a real-time ray tracing with, I should probably change that floor. Hold on. Get this thing out of here. What is that? I can't have a white floor in there. It's just not going to be right. You do maple? Sure. I just had to get rid of the white. Okay. Is that you can see this is already starting to look pretty good. If you looked at this compared to 2019 Twinmotion, right, this alone is already looking pretty good for real time. But I'm going to show you some settings that make it look even better. So I'm not going to go through each one of these, and I could share this after the fact. I may even have this online somewhere, but I could share this with Rachel and she could distribute it. But these are kind of the current light settings that I'm using in Twinmotion, especially when I'm using Lumen, which is a real-time rendering engine within the tool. So what I'll do first is I'll set all these settings without Lumen, and then I'll switch on Lumen so you can see the difference. But the first things first is all these settings exist under what Lumen or Twinmotion calls ambiance. Let me hide my library, and now you guys can see the ambiance. And so the first thing that you need to do is you need to assign an HDRI sky. What HDRI skies do is they use a sky object to replace the global illumination of your scene. So I'm going to quickly go. Let me see my settings again. Which one am I using? So I'm using morning and afternoon cloudy 32. So we'll just do that. Not noon. Try it again. Morning, afternoon, cloudy. And you can see even this, there's a ridiculous number of stuff to choose from. So you can see there's my setting there. Then I am doing a 3 for intensity. You can rotate it so that it makes sense for your scene. So maybe we'll do something like, I don't know, let's do something like this. Okay. And then we'll go back to here. So that was down here on the bottom. Then under the natural lighting, you want to change the sun intensity. Let's scroll back up here. Sun intensity to 10. Let's do sun size. That's fine. Ambient 1.3. Ambient goes up a little bit. Sun size will crank up a little bit. That's fine. Then we go over to camera. We want to change any of these definitions in here under camera. We'll check exposure. So camera. Oh, I need to turn on, there we go. I do need to turn on Lumen first, huh? Yeah, I guess I should turn on Lumen first. Oh wait, exposure's out here. So for exposure, I think I had, 1.5, and then the shadow boost. I'll show you real quick what that looks like. So now there's a highlight reduction and there's a shadow boost, which helps pull these things down. We'll leave this for now. Under render, I'm going to change here, and then effects. You can change the contrast and lighting. This will probably look a little bit better when I throw some trees in it, but that's okay. All right, but if I start looking around now, you can see that the scene, the building itself is actually starting to look really nice. Exposure might be a little high, so we'll fix that, but once we get some trees in there. So right away, you can see it's looking a little better. Then we turn on Lumen, and all of a sudden it looks much, much better. It's subtle, and you'll see when we start putting other stuff on, but what you'll notice if you look closely is the ambient shadows, the full ray tracing, the reflections, everything is just a little bit more realistic, right? You could even start seeing the reflections between here and here. So let's keep Lumen on, and then we're going to add some trees and stuff. So right away, you can see we're already getting to something useful. Uh-oh. Sorry, I just kicked my HDMI cable. You guys probably didn't see that. Okay, so now let's quickly add trees. Watch this. Remember how we had a separate subdivide? So this object was separate from this object in Revit. I'll show you why. We're going to jump over to our populate. And now there's different ways to populate things. And so I'm going to populate foliage, and I'm going to use scatter. Okay. So with scatter, I go to my beautiful library here. I hit some trees, and we'll do a couple different trees. So I'll do a laurel. So what I do is I place whatever trees I want to scatter within this area. I'm going to place them in this box over here. And I'll go to, let's see, Colorado spruce. We'll do European beech. Sure. So I'm going to select these trees now. And right here, there's a little plus. What does it do? It scatters these objects about that material. So if I click here, just like that, click a couple more times, we got a forest, right? Now, if I select that, I can make them taller. Okay. Now, just like that, we're starting to build a forest around our scene. Now, if we want more flexibility within the scene, we can use, I'll go to populate, and this time I'll paint. And I'll do similar trees. Maybe we'll do a couple less, so I'll do laurel. Hey, search. Laurel is my favorite tree. Don't know why, but it doesn't want to search it now. There we go, laurel. Okay, we'll do a laurel, and then we'll do one, let's do like an oak. We'll do a turkey oak. Okay, so now I select these, I hit the paint, and this part's super cool. This is, you're basically just painting along this surface, right? So if I go along this way, I'm just painting like I'm Bob Ross over here, right? Just hitting all the stuff, going around. And I'm just kind of filling in the spot. And then with that, just like with the other one, you can select these, you can change the density of it, you can change the age of these objects, and you can start building in your forest. So now you can see we're getting even closer and closer to something that's going to look somewhat like we want in the middle of the woods. And what's really cool is the same thing applies to the grass and the floor and so on and so forth. So if I wanted to add, let's say we want this to look like the woods the woods of Connecticut down here. Super simple. Go to populate. And I will do, I'm going to go to scatter. I'm going to go to, let's do grass and flowers. And we'll do some tall grass. We'll do, and then we'll do some bushes, do some ferns, something like that. This might be a little overkill, but let's see. So now if I click scatter and I click here, you'll see just like that in one click, I've got what I need here. And now that we have some vegetation in here, and I should probably put this, we could select these. I can make these a little bit smaller. The tall grass might be a little taller. The ferns, maybe we make those. You could change the tint of them too if you want them to be a little less green, whatever. You get the idea. Okay, so now, if I get out of this, you could place things. Actually, let's place one rock. So if you remember correctly with the objects, we have, as I said, I have this gigantic library of objects that I can work with. Oh, by the way, actually, before I jump into objects, I want you to look really closely at, notice the reflection on this guy and the shadows here. Remember what I was talking about the Lumen? Watch this. That's without Lumen. That's with Lumen. Okay. So Lumen is a real-time ray tracing engine that was ported over from Unreal, and so it's been a massive game changer for this for Twinmotion. Okay. As I was saying, let me actually check this. Sometimes the shadow. Okay. So let's place, as I was mentioning with the objects, you have this gigantic library of objects to use, but then you also have Quixel mega scans, which again, these are not just surfaces, but there's actual objects that were scanned from the real world. So if I want to put, let's say a boulder, so let's do some rocks, we'll do granite. I want to put some boulders on here, right? You can see there's a forest boulder. Try this one. As well as this mossy rock, sure. So when I place this, if you look closely at it, I'll make it a little bit bigger here. This is an actual object that was scanned. So it's a high resolution object that was scanned and now easily placeable in your scene, right? I'm not a huge fan of the fact that it has this stuff sticking out, so we'll do that. And then I think I downloaded this one too. And so there's another rock. Okay, so we can put a couple of rocks like this. Maybe this one's a really big one. But if you look closely at the detail of this thing, we have an endless supply of these objects to use in our scene, which is really, really cool, right? I'm really not liking these plants right now, but that's okay. We'll leave it for now. They just don't look, they look like Jurassic Park plants. Okay, so if I go back to the scene now, let me set up right here. Let me go back to ambiance. Now that we're kind of built out a little bit, I can do things like change the quality, play with the shadow. What I really want to play with is go back to the camera. Oh, sorry, the FX. So we have contrast up. I think not bad. I feel like maybe we want to play with the exposures a little bit. Yeah, the shadow boost. There we go. All right. And now from here, you can build your scene. And so like if I want to put a person, let's put a person up here. And you notice these are real-time views, right? So hopefully you guys can appreciate how this is not rendered. This is what you're looking at, how nice this looks for what it is, right? It's real-time. And so I can do things like I can put a posed human. Let's do casual. And let's make him, this is Floyd, he's standing over here. And no, I didn't know his name was Floyd. That's just the name on the thing. Talking to the nature. But you can also fill in spaces like this. Like if I wanted to do a yoga room, I can search for yoga. And because I have this endless supply, it's coming from Sketchfab, it's coming from Quixel Megascans, it's coming from the Twinmotion library. I have all this stuff. I can actually download pretty much any of these. They're not all great. It's kind of like Revit City or something. It's not, you know, some of the stuff is going to be garbage. Some of it's going to take up a lot of your scene. Some of it looks like weird video game stuff. But you can see here, this is like this yoga rack, yoga mat rack. Yeah, that's something that's kind of cool, right? So I can just quickly drag this into my theme. The biggest thing you'll find, depending on where you're pulling stuff from, is you might get like a weird scale, for example. But that's okay. So we'll put this there, and then you can see there might be like a lady doing yoga pose, whatever. But you get the idea. The idea is that you have this unlimited supply. Okay, so now you got your seat. What can you do with this? Well, you can present it just like this to a client if you wanted, which I've done lots of times. Right? Here I am. I'm in my theme. And I'm just showing them, hey, here's your yoga room. Hopefully you go a little bit slower. I know I'm going kind of fast. But here's your yoga room. Here's your view out from your yoga room. Here's your yoga space. By the way, I mean, just pay attention to some of the details on the materials there. That's real time. That's not even rendered. That's super impressive. It's probably my favorite part. Or if you want to make some images or videos, I go to, let me get to a view that I want to, let's say this is a nice little money shot view right here. Okay, I'm going to go down to media. I'm going to go to camera, click plus. You can see it took a picture. And now within this picture, I can change some of these settings as well that don't affect anything else. So if I want to change, for example, I want parallelism, so I don't have 3-point perspective or any type of perspective, something like this. Let's just do that. I'll refresh it a little bit. I can change the time of day or something for this. I can, if I duplicate this scene, here I have this one. On this one, maybe I want to do a different rotation or different shadows. I don't know. Or maybe on this one, for some reason, I want to put some rain in the scene for whatever reason, that kind of stuff. But the idea is that you have the ability to control these two things separately. And then from there, it's just a matter of exporting. So I'll just go here. I'd say I want to export that rendering, do a final thing, click export, dump it into the folder, click select folder. And now it's going to export the image as a rendering, which shouldn't take too long. Being on Zoom and whatnot might take a little long. There you go. I think it was only 1080p, so you can crank up the size too. But and so if I open the image, there's our image there. And so just like that, in 45 minutes, we've created a scene like this. And now, last but not least, before we open up for questions, what if we want to change the building? I know that's probably going to be the first question anyways. Let me quit media mode. Let me hide this thing out of here. Let me hide the library out of here. Okay, so let's say we modify our design. So I'm going to go back into Revit. Okay, and let's say what's the modification we make that's not going to blow everything up? Okay, let's say we change this railing from this to something like that, whatever. Okay, so we changed our railing. I'm just going to go to View, Twinmotion, Export to Datasmith. I'm going to overwrite my building file. Go back into Twinmotion, and then all I have to do is go under Import and click Refresh on the building. And just like that, there's the update. Okay. And so notice it updated the building. And so because it was only refreshing the building file, it didn't refresh the site. And if you remember how I painted on these surfaces, I painted on this, I painted on that, I used scatter. There have been moments, there will be moments where that actually will break and it may delete your paint and your scatters and you have to repaint them because the surface was refreshed. So that's kind of why, it doesn't always happen, but sometimes it happens. And so that's kind of why doing it with the building separate is kind of the key to the workflow.